Welcome to Delta Renaissance. I'm your host, Sade Turnipseed, and on today's show, I am truly honored to have a legendary figure. He's a civil rights movement worker from way back, from the very beginning. All of the work that involved Fannie Lou Hamer and Bob Moses and all, he was there. And this is a man who just comes with so much history and so much to share with us about the significance of our struggles here in Mississippi. That would be none other than Mr. Charles McLaurin. Welcome to Delta Renaissance, sir. I'm so happy that you're here. It's been a long time coming, you know?
Thank you.
Since I've been doing this show, you're one of the people that I've always wanted to have sit in this seat. And so you're finally here.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you inviting me here, and this is an opportunity for me to talk about some of the things that I've done over the years.
Yeah. So let's just go ahead and get into it. But what I really want is for people at home, you know, to truly understand the man that's sitting here. And so let's start at the beginning. Let's start. Where are you from?
Well, I was born in Jackson, Mississippi, 72 years ago. Grew up, family of 5. We were poor during the era of segregation. My mother and father, neither of them finished high school. I was fortunate to live with my grandmother most of the time, who was a teacher of Dr. Booker T. Washington in Tuskegee. So she was kind of my inspiration to go to school. She always wanted all of the members of her family to go to school, and I lived with her until I was about 6 years old, traveled to and from school with her, and I got an opportunity to come to Jackson to live with my mother and my father after having stayed with my grandmother a while, and went to school there at Mary C. Jones Elementary School in Jackson, and then to Lanier High School, and then to start to get involved in hopefully going to college out at Jackson State College at that time. My friends and I, who had gone to high school together, would hang around out at Jackson State a lot, and it was out there that I first met Medgar Evers, State Field Secretary for the NAACP. And later, when I finally did decide that I was fixing to go to college, I got involved in trying to go to the State Fair in Jackson. My friends worked to help set the fair up, the State Fair, and they told me about all of the wonderful things that was at this fair, and there had been a fair for the blacks earlier, and then they had the State Fair, and so
explain that.
Well, there were segregated fairs. There was a little fair that came into the black community and set up, and the blacks went to that fair.
It was a completely different fair.
Completely different, very small, not anywhere near the State Fair. Few rides, few things, but after my friends told me about all of these things was down at the State Fair, one day I decided that I was going to go to the State Fair because they had been advertising it as State Fair. Come to the State Fair. And so I went down there and tried to buy a ticket, and I was arrested and put in jail.
For just attempting to buy a ticket to attend a State Fair. What year was this?
This was 1961. And Medgar Evers, the State Field Secretary for the NAACP, came and got me out of jail, bonded me out of jail. And then I started to, the Freedom Rides came through Jackson. I was inspired by the Freedom Riders. You know, they all came on the buses and
from northern cities
and over in Alabama where the buses had been bombed, and they put them in jail in Jackson. The Freedom Ride ended in Jackson, although it was supposed to end in New Orleans. But as the Freedom Riders came in, they locked them up, and they never got out of Jackson. So one of the leaders of the Freedom Riders, who Reverend James Bevel, deceased now, came back to Jackson after he got out of jail to organize people in Jackson, students in Jackson, who would continue the Freedom Ride to New Orleans. And he came into pool hall where my friends and I kind of hung out on the after school and on the weekends, and he encouraged us to buy a ticket to continue the Freedom Rides. And so he said that he would pay for the tickets, and that we would be met in New Orleans by someone there. I didn't go on the Freedom Ride, but 8 of my friends did go. I just couldn't see how getting arrested and staying in jail and then get out and the same problem exists. Segregation still exists. Even when the Interstate Commerce Commission ruled that interstate travel shouldn't be segregated and the station shouldn't, the city of Jackson put signs on the sidewalk still enforcing segregation. So my friends got arrested, and then they were bonded out of jail, and we then talked about organizing a movement.
So now, in your arrest, did you, I know many of them actually went to prison, to Parchment.
Some of my friends did.
Did you ever have that experience?
No.
No?
No, I never got outside of the city jail in Jackson.
But that was enough to let you know.
Well, it was enough to let me know that getting put in jail was not going to solve the problems that I saw, because I'd had a lot of problems out of white people, especially men. Seemed that all the time there was some white person that wanted the space I was in, and I had to get out of it and give it to him. In other words, I'm walking down the street, white people want to walk on the whole street.
Yeah.
I got to get off and allow them to get on it. And my mama would say, get off of this, come on over here, son. And it bothered me.
That. We're going to take a break and come back and talk more about that and how it did bother you and how it did affect you and, to some extent, your personality. What it does to you to be so dejected and so humiliated, and I know it was a horrible experience for too many people. But we're going to take a break, and we're going to come back and talk more about the personal experiences of Mr. Charles McLaurin. Okay, good.
So far, so good.
Very good.
Yeah,
so so we'll just keep going in that vein and talk about that it did in the end seem to have some impact because of the media, noting all these arrests. And
right.
So we can...
And the bond money that's being spent.
Yeah. So we can talk about it.
Yeah.
So we're coming right back, so hold on. Is there a way to tighten up on his shot? Because he looks real, he's too far to the right. Yeah, that's better. That's better.
If you notice, I've been leaning there. I've tried to keep my mind on not sitting back. I'm so used to
So you
back.
can sit up straight then. Welcome back. I am having the real pleasure of talking to Mr. Charles McLaurin, and you were talking about that experience of having gone to jail, and your friends, many of your friends who actually did go to Parchment as a result of just wanting equality, just wanting to ride the bus,
Sure.
just wanting to be treated like a man or
Right.
like a human being.
Right.
And the very horrible and pretty horrendous experiences that too many people went through. But pick up from where you left off, because in the end, though you didn't, go to prison, many, like you said, many of your friends did, but that did have an impact on media, you know, when folks went to jail.
Yeah.
And I think the rest of the country became outraged at just the notion of you know, folks standing on principle to be treated equally, yet they now are penalized with prison sentences and beating and tortures and all, and too many people lost their lives. But
That's true.
yeah,
You know, during that time, after my arrest, and Medgar got me out of jail, then later, when you're talking about the media, Medgar was always trying to get the media attention and trying to get the message out to the nation about the problems that black people especially faced in Mississippi because of racial segregation and the fact that we could not vote. See, we couldn't vote. The legislature took away our right to vote in the 1890s, and by setting up literacy tests and by poll taxes and interpretation of the Constitution. So we couldn't vote.
Which were only given to black people.
Given to black people.
Yeah.
We proved so many times in the court that whites had not been given these tests and they were allowed to vote. There are numerous cases that prove that. But
you know, and just to kind of fast forward on that particular point with what Fannie Lou Hamer did.
yeah,
You were there.
I was there.
Could you tell the rest of, especially the children who are watching, and I don't think that they're getting enough of this information in the schools, and so if you, as a person who lived this history, talk to us about the historic stance that was taken by our sister, our beloved Fannie Lou Hamer. Talk to us about what she did to gain the right for freedom to vote. Yeah. What was that about?
Well, you have to look at it, and I tell people all the time that Fannie Lou Hamer was a sharecropper. She was the granddaughter of slaves, and that she, when she came to a mass meeting that we were holding in Ruleville, Mississippi in 1962, that was a part of our effort for coming to the Delta. Bob brought us to the Delta.
Bob Moses.
Bob Moses, who was the SNCC field director in the state, brought us to the Delta at the request of Amzie Moore in Cleveland, Mississippi. Amzie was a World War II hero who came home, had gone across the sea and fought to make democracy safe for the world. And when he got home, he didn't have the same kinds of freedom that he had fought for. And he asked Bob Moses to bring him some SNCC people to the Delta. And Bob brought us up. We started holding mass meetings in Ruleville. In fact, Amzie took three SNCC people to Ruleville in 1962, August 1962, to help the black citizens in Ruleville start a voter registration drive. And there were several ladies in Ruleville who had gone to training with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. over of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. That was the conference that Dr. King formed after the Montgomery bus boycott. But they had been trained in citizenship education, and they were holding workshops, training, trying to help blacks pass the literacy test. Mrs. Hamer,
Even though it was impossible to pass.
It was designed to keep us off, but you had to go through the process. One of the things we were doing were building a case for the Justice Department, and we wanted to get those applications, get people to make those applications, and because people like the late Senator James O. Eastland, U.S. Senator, was telling people in Washington that black folks did not want to vote, that they wouldn't vote even if they had to vote.
That they were just happy.
They were just happy. And we wanted to show otherwise. So we would get as many people as we could to go down. So in August, Fannie Lou Hamer of 1962, Fannie Lou Hamer joined us on a bus with a bus load of people from Ruleville to Indianola to register to vote. And of course, the bus driver, after Mrs. Hamer and the others had taken that literacy test, the bus driver was arrested on the way back to Ruleville because he was driving a bus that was the color of a school bus.
Right.
Now this is a bus that the man used every day to haul cotton pickers to the field, haul people to Florida and elsewhere to pick fruit. But
It's okay to go to the cotton fields,
Yeah.
but it ain't okay to go to the polling booth or to
no,
to vote. Yeah.
Lawrence Guillard, one of my SNCC friends, used to always say that trying to register to vote was direct action. And we considered direct action in the old days sitting in, standing in the restaurants and those things. But to go to the courthouse and ask to become a citizen in your community was direct action. And
How many times did Fannie Lou Hamer stand on those court steps to enter and was turned away?
well, one of the things was she never was turned away from the courthouse. What happened was that the registrar of voters is really the circuit clerk in each county, and that he or she has the responsibility for registering voters. So what had happened was that he didn't open the door when the people came up. And so we had to wait around until he called somebody, a lawyer or somebody, and asked them what to do about all of these blacks out here asking to register to vote.
Outside of the courthouse.
So we had to stand outside of the courthouse here in Sunflower County.
Right.
This is the Sunflower County Courthouse.
Right.
And until he decided, somebody told him to let them in. And he let them in 2 at a time.
2 at a time.
Yes.
So we're going to take another break and come back. But, you know, that is something that is, again, so important and significant to American history. I mean, it's just it's not just African American history, it's
Right,
American
it's
history and the struggle that we've all went through to have equal treatment. And we're still working on that. But
And that's what I tell young people.
Yeah,
that
we're
this
still
is
working
American
on that.
history.
That's
This
right,
is
and
not
it's
just
American history.
black history.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
So we're going to take a break and come back and talk more about Ms. Fannie Lou Hamer and the work that you're doing to honor her. There's a national movement underfoot right now to erect a monument, and I really want to talk more about her heroic stance on the court steps or out there in front of the courthouse as well. So, y'all come on back. We'll be back with Mr. Charles McLaurin.
Yeah, the guy,
Okay, all right.
are we off?
Yeah.
My granddaughter said, "Hey, we are." So, what happened was that when Fannie Lou came out, and they all got back on the bus. And the bus, as we left, the police stopped the bus, arrested the driver.
Yeah.
And and now I had never met Fannie Lou Hamer at this point. I'm on the bus. I'd never met her. But I hear, we're sitting out there on the highway, trucks driving by white men, them with guns in the windows and yelling at us and saying you're going to...
All right, save all that, because that's something that we need to talk about. Yeah. Okay. Welcome back. I'm having a great conversation with Mr. Charles McLaurin, and he was just sharing with me really important details about that bus that was stopped, that bus that was okay to go into the cotton fields, but not okay to go to the courthouse to allow these folks who've been working with their sweat, their blood, their pain, and their tears to build this country. They were not allowed to vote. And so the bus itself that was carrying people to the polling, to the voting booths was pulled over. The driver was arrested. But pick it up from there. What happened?
Well, the city police, the Indianola police, followed the bus out to the city limits, and then stopped the bus, and took the driver off, and told him he was under arrest, and brought him back into the city to the city jail. And Bob Moses and Amzie Moore, who were there with us, went back to see what charges were and to bond him out of jail, and they did. But now while the bus is sitting out here on the highway, no driver, and there are people were on the bus, sharecroppers, day laborers, and then trucks started to pass the bus. White men driving the trucks with guns in the window and yelling out, you're gonna get killed, I know where you live, and things like that. And the people on the bus was afraid. These are elderly people. You had to be 21 years of age or older to register to vote at that time. And most of these were people over 40 years of age, and some of them all the way up into their 70s. And so they were afraid. And then all of a sudden, as these people kept passing by and yelling, there was a voice on the bus, the church song, it oozed out.
What was it?
And somebody said, "That's Fannie Lou Hamer."
She was on the bus.
She was on the bus.
And you didn't know she was
I didn't know her at that time.
Yeah.
I don't meet her really officially till later.
What was the song? Can you sing it?
I never could sing, but it was something like, "Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt land, tell old Pharaoh to let my people go." And then people came in harmony. And shortly the bus driver came back, and we proceeded to Rouville. But these people in these trucks kept driving by and getting in front of the bus, trying to run the bus off of the road.
Yeah.
So when we got to Rouville, we took people back to William Chapel. Now, William Chapel Church in Rouville was the only church in that town that we could hold mass meetings. The rest of the people were afraid.
It was the fear.
Fear. I mean, tremendous. I grew up in Jackson, and I never knew the fear. I never had to, even when I got put in jail, and even when I growing up, and a lot of times the policemen would come into our pool hall and try to intimidate us, and banish the guns. I was never. I didn't know about that fear, and then it bothered me, that why wouldn't how could you be that frightful? But I didn't understand what these people had been through. The little bit that I had seen in Jackson, these people knew about Emmett Till. They knew about numerous other lynchings and draggings in the streets behind trucks and cars, and serious beatings and things like that. So
we're gonna pardon your phone and just keep on talking. But normally I tell people to silence their phone, but that's okay.
I would have turned it off, but I didn't think about it. But that fear, the crippling kind of fear. But that was why Amsey Moore had brought us up here, because he felt that the people we needed to live in the community with the people and be among them, be a part of their daily lives. Now, most SNCC people were trained by Ella Baker.
Yes.
And Ella Baker believed in participatory democracy, that the people ought to participate in the process.
Another tremendously great woman, significant to American history. That
founded SNCC. I mean, she made SNCC.
I went to her funeral in New
Right.
York with Dr. John Henrik Clark. He took me there as someone, and I knew nothing of her.
Yeah.
But fortunately for me, just being at the funeral brought in so much of the history and the lessons of the civil rights movement, this long, protracted civil rights movement. And because of that, it's no way that I can interview you and talk to you about this part of our journey in just 30 minutes. So we're going to continue this show. We're going to do part 2. So this is part 1. And I invite you all to come back next week, because we're going to continue the show talking with Mr. McLaurin. And there's so much more to discuss. This one major piece is that he's a part of the National Committee to erect and build the Fannie Lou Hamer Monument and Museum in Ruleville. So come back next week and we're going to talk so much more about that and a continuation of where we left off today, just the struggle, the protracted struggle, the civil rights movement, and his involvement and so many others. And so, Mr. McLaurin, thank you so much for being here with us this week. But fortunately, you're going to stick around for next week too. So you guys tune in next week, and we'll be back. And thanks for tuning in.